At this time of year, the candy is basically available for a low price, and one can buy candies in bulk, and then there's no need for anyone to go trick or treating anywhere. And then we put a sign on our door saying, we do not celebrate Halloween. Please understand that we do not celebrate Halloween, something to this effect. So, the kids came, they opened the screen door. Before they could knock, they see the sign, please understand, we do not celebrate Halloween. And they got the message and they left. I'm not saying this is the only way of doing it. Again, one has to play it by ear. If you are, very close to the neighbors and, everyone down the street is giving candies to the kids and your lone home, that's a Muslim home in the whole street, and people who identify that Muslim home and wonder, what are these Muslims? They're stingy. They can't give a little bit of candy to the kids. So that too could become an issue. So one has to use wisdom and know his or her situation and see how things will work in your situation. I mean, of course, the act of giving candy to somebody, that by itself is not haram. You're giving halal candy, they can eat it. Being part of that celebration has some questions about it which we are raising. Many of the questions pertain much more to the history, where it came from, what it used to be. And maybe it's not really that now. People forget all about this history. They're not doing it for that. There are some people who practice some ancient customs and rituals, some people who are still involved in seeking out magical solutions to things. So for them, they are in fact engaged in the full haram that we're talking about. But for most people, it's just an opportunity to have fun, just another holiday in the year, just something to do other than sitting around and watching television. And for the kids, it may be just an occasion to collect a lot of candy. And it's a bit of an adventure. You go around, you knock the doors, and you get some candy. So one will then have to use hikmah and wisdom in knowing how to help your own kids to understand the history and why we are not so excited about it, and how to help other kids in the neighborhood and other people that you're associating with to understand that as Muslims, we are not so excited about that celebration. Of course, having attended this lecture, you are one step ahead because you know something about the history of it. You know where the name came from. A lot of people you talk about may not know where that name came from. Who knows that that Halloween actually came from All Hallows Eve, the evening before All Saints' Day. People don't know this. And in some regions, the celebration of All Saints' Day has shifted from November 1st to November 2nd. So people may not actually have made that connection, but now you know. People may not have known that bobbing for apples actually is a practice that recognizes Pomona, the goddess of the fruits. People may not have known that dressing up as devils now and as evil things and witches and goblins and ghouls and ghosts actually was based on the idea that on that night such evil spirits are roaming the earth, and one was doing that in order to be safe from them, to blend in with them and to look like them. Of course, for a Muslim, one wouldn't want to do that. But now we know where all of these things came from. We understand that trick-or-treating actually has to do with the idea that the gods and the evil spirits would pull tricks on people, and people would try to placate them, make them happy, so they wouldn't pull tricks on you. And now, if we have kids going about doing the same thing, aren't the kids copying the same evil things? And should people be training their kids to copy evil things? And one last thing we can mention then, before I go to your questions and then we close for Maghrib, which will come up very shortly. There is the concept of begging. In Islam, we know that one is allowed to beg if one has nothing. I mean, one is permitted. And even so, people are praised and recognized, especially by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, who do not have enough, but yet they do not beg. Because that shows a certain amount of dignity in the person. That even though he doesn't have, but he does not beg. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands the Muslims, in fact, to find such persons and to make sure they're okay. Because there are some people who come and ask you, and there are some people who are equally in need, but they do not come to ask you. So they have special mention in the Quran. That shows that from the Quranic perspective, the human dignity is something highly honored and respected. And each person should have that self-esteem. We should not be teaching our children to go stretch their hand and beg for something. We should teach them to be givers. We are givers, not takers. And there's a hadith which says that the upper hand is better than the lower hand. There's another one that says if a person begs, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will so make it that this person is continually begging. And if one chooses to be self-sufficient, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will provide for this person as well. And the Prophet ﷺ used to seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from being in debt. Because he said when a person is indebted, then, he starts to break his promises and he even lies. Because that's what happens. You owe somebody and you promise you're going to pay them next week because you hope you're going to have that money. And something changes and then next week comes, you don't have that money, so you break your promise. And then sometimes you don't have a good story to show why you're breaking the promise. So then you're forced to tell a little lie here and there, and then of course it becomes worse over time. So the best thing is don't even get into debt. But now, my main point is not about debt, but about begging itself. One should feel self-sufficient and dependent only on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for one's provisions. And if one needs to beg, one is forced by circumstances, yes, one can. One can apply for welfare if needed. One can apply for social assistance and so on, or disability assistance, whatever is available. This is fine if one needs it. But if one can do without it, then this is best. That one is free from any kind of stretching one's hand to demand from others. But then this is precisely what is happening with the trick-or-treating. The kids are going with the bowls or purses or bags or whatever and they're essentially begging. In fact, there is a thing called extortion, and I don't want to be overly dramatic, but we should weigh it from all sides. We are trying to be fair and reasonable and waiting. That only happens if we weigh it from all sides. You know what is extortion? When some gang comes to your store and says you must pay up, otherwise I harm your store, right, or harm you or whatever. So they come and they force you to pay. So they are begging, but they're not really begging. They're demanding by force. So the trick-or-treating actually, in a way, given the history, is a demand by force. When they say, you either pay up or we harm you. We throw eggs or tomatoes on your door or something like this. So to avoid any of that problem, you better give us some candy. That's really the origin of this trick-or-treating. So if kids are doing that now, maybe it does not have that flavor because I don't think kids now will be doing that. I hope they won't. But this is where it came from. So we should ask, apart from begging itself, which is a problem, with this history of the practice, do we really want to have anything to do with that? So if one is forced by circumstances to do some of these things, one should make sure that one does not go the full way. One should know where to draw the line. There are some aspects of this which are relatively harmless, and some aspects of it which are deeply embedded into paganism, witchcraft, and the worship of gods and goddesses, and having contact with evil things and evil spirits. So one has to differentiate between the two. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us guidance and give us wisdom and keep us in His religion until death. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help our children who are growing up in this part of the world to understand what is Islam, and may they be proud of this religion and uphold it as their very own, and give us all the grace and tawfiq, Ya Rabb, to obey you and to worship you and to stay away from all evil things. I will now take your questions if you have some, either about anything that I've said or some other matter that you feel is important for us to address. Yes, brother? Oh, the pumpkin. Yes, it's a good question. The pumpkin, there is a story that emerged out of Europe saying that there was a certain man whose name was Jack, who had an encounter with the devil, and the devil went up a tree, and Jack then carved a cross into the tree, and the devil got trapped by that because of the carving on the cross. And the devil then put a curse on this jack that he will, be roaming the earth for the rest, like till eternity. So now the idea was that to help this poor jack, you should have this light that will help him to see his path, at least for one night. So that's how people came to have a light. Initially in Ireland, they used to carve a turnip. But in the United States of America, pumpkins are widely available. So when people came to America from Europe, they, instead of using a turnip for the purpose, they began to use the pumpkin. And usually, of course, the pumpkin might also be carved in such a way to like have a face, to be part of that frightening imagery that is associated with Halloween. As we say, there are many different influences that come together. But the idea of having the jack-o'-lantern, what's a lantern? It's a lamp, right? It's a jack-o'-lantern. It's a lantern for Jack to help that guy who was believed to be under a curse, and he's just roaming till eternity, to help him to see his way. So again, people do things without knowing what they are and why they're there, but that's how it works. And at least we know. You can ask somebody. Somebody asks you why you're not celebrating Halloween. Say, I would if I knew what it was. Do you know what it is? Okay, why do you do this? Why do you have this pumpkin? Do you know where it came from? No, then why do you do it? Because everybody else is doing it. So we just do what everybody else does? Or do we do things which are wise, reasonable, which has some purpose, which has some value? So, why do you do this, right? Certainly there's some value in doing, something which is part of the culture. You don't want to be a spoil sport. You want to be cooperating and amiable and likable and so on. That's human nature. But still, we can do that perhaps in different ways, and we should try to explore different ways of being friends with people and being close to people as well. Any other questions? Yes? Yes. Okay. So the question is, what should you do if the kids come to your house? Yeah. So I don't have a clear answer to this. I told you, something that worked for us when we had young kids, what we did. I don't think we even do it nowadays. I think maybe by now the kids in the area just know that our house is like that, which may be good or bad. As I said, it could be a bad thing that they think, okay, we can't go to the Muslim house. Muslims are cheap people. They don't give anything or whatever. I don't know. But at the time, we felt that it was because we had small kids. And we thought that if we entertain those kids, then our kids may start feeling bad, because that's bringing the fun to their face. It's better that the kids came and they knocked and they didn't get anything and they left, right? But of course, they hardly knocked because they came, they saw the sign and they went away. Our sign said something simple like, we do not celebrate Halloween, thanks for your understanding, something like this. So they came, they read it, and they got the message, and they left. So that's one way of dealing with it. But another way may be that, of course, if you have a lot of candy in the house and your kids are all, well, they're fine and so on, they won't be affected by this, to give them just so that they know that Muslims, too, can give something, and, they're having their fun. And they're going to do that anyway. And that part of giving them the candy is not really part of the evil that we describe now. The evil thing is if somebody is using Halloween, you will see at Dufferin Grove, they will light a bonfire. And they do this every year. And the people who do this is an ancient celebration. Again, it's part of the worshipping of the Samhain. They light a bonfire, and they used to slaughter the animals and throw the bones and so on of the animals into the bonfire. Because again, they're trying to placate the gods at that time. There are some people who take Wicca as their religion. The Wicca actually means a wise person. And that's where the word witch came from. But people misunderstood, there were old wise people who tried to learn science as much as science was available in their day. They used that knowledge to heal people. But people can use knowledge to harm people as well. And so that science became misunderstood, and people who practiced this Wicca, which meant knowledge, or which meant wise one, came to be called witches. But there are people today who continue to practice this ancient Wicca, which they regard as a religion as well. And some of this may actually involve worship of nature and aspects of nature. So lighting the bonfire is connected with all of this. So there are some people who are doing this as a religion, and some people who are doing this as a set of magical practices and connecting with evil spirits and evil things. So that part is bad. We can have nothing to do with that, no part of it. But the part which is just a part of the culture and commercialism and just a little fun for the kids to go out and get some candy and so on, this you might say is a lesser evil. And you're giving them the candy is, even lesser than doing it yourself. And of course you're doing that because you're trying to avoid a greater evil, which would be that if you don't give them, they will think that Muslims are cheap. So if that's what you're thinking, look, if I don't give them, they will have a bad impression about Muslims, then that means you're picking the lesser of the two evils. It's bad that they're going about trick-or-treating like this, and that you're contributing to that. But that's not as bad as if they were to get the wrong impression about Muslims. If that's your thinking about it, then it seems that this is, in that situation, that should be fine, right? And Allah knows best, and we ask Him always for His guidance. So I have a couple of written questions. Let me deal with these if you don't mind, and then I'll come back to some oral questions. Question, what is the history of a gate night, the night before Halloween? This I don't know about, I'm sorry. Question, if Halloween is a pagan or anti-Muslim holiday, then in essence, practicing it is shirk. How, if we know its origin, can we as Muslims practice and expect forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if it is known shirk? Well, the answer to that is that yes, if something is shirk, then we cannot practice it knowingly and then hope for forgiveness. I mean, forgiveness is achieved when we did something usually not knowing, and then now when we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness. But of course, as we have described, those aspects of shirk which are connected with it are very ancient. And nowadays, if one is doing it, then practicing some aspect of Halloween, one hardly has that idea. He doesn't know why he is doing these things. You see, there is no intention or niyyah connected with shirk in most of the people. So if one was to involve in some practice, like let's say bobbing for apples. So if one sees there's some sport here, water it, some apples in a tub, you just go and try to get an apple, you either score one or not. It's just an ordinary game for most people. But we have traced the origin, and we have seen that this is related to the worship of the goddess Pomona. Now, naturally, when a Muslim knows this, he will have some hesitation, even though it's not now for the purpose of that anything to do with that goddess, but still, a Muslim will have some hesitation. But if one did it, we wouldn't say he is committing shirk, because there's a difference between having a statue of the goddess Pomona and coming and worshiping that goddess and playing this game. One can see that there's a great difference, and we should not be too extreme and uptight about things and everything is shirk and everything is haram. We should try to be reasonable and balanced about things. If something is really and clearly haram, we should call it that and stay away from it completely. But then if you make everything haram, then you make life impossible. And then that's not the religion itself, because as I explained in the Friday khutbah, most things are permissible and few things are haram. And that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala left it. Not that, most things are haram and only few things are halal. By the time you get to that, you should realize that you have turned the thing upside down. Okay. One last question on this page. Does buying candy and selling clearance after Halloween constitute a practice connected to Halloween, and is it permissible? Well, the selling of candy now, this is a commercial thing, right? And when we think of evil things and things connected with them, we should differentiate between like being a direct contributor to something and being an indirect. And how indirect? Let's say somebody's manufacturing knives. Now, those knives you intend to be used for good purposes, to be used as kitchen utensils. But at the same time, one can use that knife as a slayer and kill people. So now you are an indirect contributor to the fact that people are killing others with the knife. And this is more so in the case of guns. You might be manufacturing guns for good purposes to help the military to protect the citizens of the nations. But evil people will use the same guns for evil purposes. And again, if you know that somebody is using it for that evil purpose, now here it becomes more clear. Can you supply the people who you know will be using it for evil purpose? No, you cannot supply them because you know that they're using it for evil purposes. But still, your supplying them is not like using it yourself. There is some difference between the two, though the difference may not be so very great, and you're still, what you're doing is still bad enough. Let's put it this way, because you're giving them to go and use it for evil purposes. But sometimes it becomes a little bit more blurred, like you're growing grapes, for example, and somebody will buy the grapes from you and they will make that into wine, and you know that somebody will do that. So you're planting grapes, this is halal, and you're selling grapes, this is halal, and somebody buys it from you and they make that into wine. So are you responsible for the person who's finally drinking the wine? There is some degree of responsibility, but it's not like you actually drank the wine yourself. So one should differentiate between being a direct contributor and being an indirect contributor. Now, obviously, one who is selling the candy in the store is far more indirect as a contributor to the practice of Halloween, because we have seen that just simply trick-or-treating for candies nowadays, that is one of the least harmful aspects of Halloween, right? Because that's, in fact, the candy, tricking or treating for candy now is not connected with any kind of worship of any evil spirit or God or anything like this. It's just that the practice began with the idea that people had to placate the evil spirits lest they pull a trick on them. But that idea is not in people now. People are not saying, let's do like the evil spirits. So because that idea is not there, this is one of the less undesirable practices. And working in a store where one is selling candy, and then there is a Halloween special, and after the Halloween there's a clearance of the candies and whatever. This is so indirectly related that I don't believe that a Muslim who is working in such a store, Walmart or whatever, should have to worry about this. You just carry on. That's only one little aspect of what you're doing, and I don't believe they should be too worried about that. If you have your own store, and now there's a question, should you put on a Halloween special? I don't know. But if somebody was doing that, I don't see that this will be such a bad thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but we shouldn't exaggerate what's bad in it. He is part of the commercial landscape. There are sales everywhere. Everyone has their candies on a discounted price at that time. So as a business person, you wouldn't want to sell the same item at a higher price when everybody else has got it at a lower price. If everybody's got a sale on it, then you had better got a sale on it as well, even if you don't like Halloween and you don't like anything to do with it, because if they come and find you have the same thing for a higher price, then they will have a bad impression about what your store is about. Next time they won't come back for anything to your store because they have the impression that the cheaper things are somewhere else. So maybe you want to have a sale just because everybody else is having a sale, and you don't want to give the bad impression, even though you don't like the idea of Halloween. So I wouldn't worry about that aspect of it. Question, after the program is done, okay, so we should, it's not a question, but it's a note that I should announce when the program is done, that we have some refreshments downstairs. So do you feel we should have it now? Can somebody relate that back to me? Do we have the refreshments now or after the Maghrib prayer? After Maghrib. How many minutes before Maghrib? 6:17. Okay, so we're close to that. We only have a few minutes. If you have any further questions, we'll take them. Otherwise, we can break and you can socialize with each other and make your wudu and whatnot. Yes? Uh-huh. Okay, so the question is, since Christianity has moved their All Saints' Day to now November 1st, Is there anything Christian that remains in this practice? Like, what do Christians do on All Saints' Day? And I don't know, really, the answer to that, what they do on All Saints' Day. I suspect that, or I expect that they will have, they will pay special attention to worshiping and calling on the names of their saints on that particular day. In Catholicism in particular, there is some way in which the saints are being appealed to, or dua is made to them. So they pray to God through the saints. They will pray to Allah through Maryam alayhi salam. So they're asking the saints for their needs. So maybe they do more of it on that particular day. I don't know. I don't know what specifically is different than this. And of course, they do that not on the evening, but on the day itself. So they wouldn't be doing anything particularly Christian on the night of October 31st. Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. The follow-up question is about the other holidays as well that we mentioned, whether Christmas or Easter or whatever. We don't see anything specifically Christian about them. They mostly become part of the culture here, and they are obviously related to pagan things. Well, nowadays they're not even related to anything pagan. They have just become part of the cultural landscape. There's a holiday in this land called Easter and called Christmas and whatever, and they have mostly become commercialized. It's more so the commercial interests that are reminding you, Christmas is coming, you have to buy a diamond ring for your wife, or something like this. So if you don't have $2,000, you better try and get $2,000 quickly, right? Otherwise, you're going to have a bad Christmas. Is that it? Yeah, that's right, exactly. And that reminds me that one of the things they used to do on Halloween in the past is that they used to use it as a night when they can try to foretell the future. And one way in which they used to do that, they used to bake some bread and they would put some items in the bread. So if you get a bread with that item in it, that is something about your future. So they would either put something like, I had the notes here, let me see what they say. Okay, so they would put either a pea or a stick, or a rag, a piece of rag, or a coin, or a ring. So if you get the bread with the pea in it, then then you will marry that year. And if you get the one with the stick, that means that's a stick to beat your wife, they said. And that means your marriage, is not going to be unhappy that year. And because you're always going to have disputes between you and your wife. And if you get the rag, then you're going to be poor. And if you get the coin, then you're going to be rich. And if you get the ring, then you're going to be married that year. Oh, sorry, if you got the pea, then you will not marry. You got the ring, you will marry. You got the pea, then you will not marry. But these are superstitious things, It just so happened like a fortune cookie. It just so happens it came to you, right? This is their version of the fortune cookie. And apparently they're still selling cakes with the ring in it in Ireland even now, because this celebration actually originated in Ireland with the Celts, the ancient Celtic people. And it has actually continued there and eventually has become now an international celebration. Yes? Oh, why do they like the black cat? Apparently people who in ancient times practiced magic, they used the black cat for this. They thought the black cat is especially useful in magic. And this is why people have to watch their cats, especially if they have a black one, they have to watch that. And even in modern times, some people have the superstition that if a black cat crosses your path, then something terrible will happen to you, right? So, but these are superstitions and myths. And finally, we should say, if we, before closing, we should at least say this. This is what Sheikh Abdullah Hakim has recommended in his paper, that when we are thinking about all these evil things that people are doing, and sometimes we might get worried in case somebody may harm us in some way with all of this evil going about. And the protection that we have is in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are two surahs which most of us have memorized, and all of the kids here should know by memory. قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ الْفَلَقِ. And what's the other one? قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. These are two surahs which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed for our protection from evil things. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq means, say, I seek refuge in the Lord of the daybreak. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq, from the evil of what He created. So, out of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created, there might be some evil things in there, some things that can harm us. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us from that. And notice the way in which we have put that now into perspective. It's not like there's some evil thing there that is so mighty and fearsome. After all, it is something that Allah created. So if we want protection from that thing, we go to one who is greater than Him. And that is the one who created Him. That is Allah. So we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to create us from that, to save us from that. And we're asking His protection also from an-nafathati fil uqad. An-nafathati fil uqad, these were the women who used to practice magic by blowing into some knots. They would take some things, tie it, maybe they take the hair of somebody and they tie it. They practice some things. In the Caribbean, they refer to this as voodoo, right? And so if they get your hair or something, they do something with it. They're trying to harm you in some way. So these things really don't really harm us now. But if one is worried about that, then this is the way to seek protection from it, to ask. Phone is a good time to turn it off. Just did with mine. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulul Kareem. Amma ba'd. I'll just give you a brief background about the history of Halloween, because some people may not know what it is about. The kids are in school and they start to paint jack-o'-lanterns, pumpkins carved out and all of that. And it becomes part of the culture here. And if one says, I'm not going to be part of that, then one sticks out like a sore thumb. One becomes a kind of a spoiled sport, like one who does not know how to have fun. And we have to know what the history is about. We have to understand what the culture is, differentiate between the two, and know what is our religion, what our religion allows us, what it doesn't, and proceed in a way that will be pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and at the same time that embodies wisdom, hikmah, and deals with the practical situations in which we live. So we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Him to send peace and blessings upon all of His messengers, especially upon the last of all of them, our beloved Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Certainly Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deserves all of the praise, much more than we can praise Him. He deserves to be praised as He has praised Himself. And it is with that sort of praise that we decide to praise our Lord subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask Him to accept that from us. Certainly we have much to be thankful for, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us life and breath. He gives us the vision we have and the mechanism that allows that vision to be possible. And Allah has given us a brain that makes human beings controllers of their environments and controllers of the things that are around them within the limitations that Allah has prescribed for us. So we start by thanking Him. And we ask Him to send peace and blessings on our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, because it is his guidance that saves us from the difficulties in this life and from the misguidance and dalala in which other people wallow. And it is that guidance which will secure our everlasting salvation in the life to come. So we praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we ask Him to send peace and blessings upon especially the last of all of His prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, when Muslims come to Canada, or if they choose any other place of residence, many of us are coming from some parts of the world where Islam was very prevalent, whether that be Saudi Arabia or Pakistan, or even in Guyana, where I was born. Even though Islam there is a minority religion, Muslims make up only about 12% of the entire population. Nevertheless, Islamic practice was well known. Some of the holidays of Muslims were recognized as official holidays in the nation. And people had a general sense of respect for the religion of Islam. So if one said that he's doing something because of his religion, because of Islam, that would be viewed with some kind of respect. So even if one doesn't want to become a Muslim, but he thinks you're doing something good. We live in a modern world in which generally religion is not respected. We should realize that. And this is why often they show disrespect to Islam as well. Of course, there is another reason why they show disrespect to Islam, because in contradistinction to the other religions, Islam is much misunderstood in the West. And some of the actions of some Muslims in other parts of the world sometimes contribute to some of this misunderstanding and distancing of Islam. So we have to understand what the environment is and know how we fit in that broader environment. Now, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us to be part of a great nation such as this one and to share in some of the blessings that He has made available in this land. But this land, of course, has a mixture of things. This land allows for everything, whether good or bad, so long as people choose to have it. And if enough people choose to have something, it will become part of the landscape. Halloween definitely is part of the landscape here. It is part of the culture. One goes into the stores starting soon after the back-to-school sales are finished. One will see all of the Halloween paraphernalia there in the stores. And even if you know nothing about Halloween, you become eventually drawn into it. Eventually you have to buy the candies because the candies are there and they are on Halloween special. So if you want candies because candies are good and halal for your kids, then you happen to be buying it now because it's on a Halloween special. These things are unavoidable. So how much is unavoidable? How much is necessary? And how much should be avoidable? This is what we need to understand. So we need to know what this whole celebration is about so that we can talk to our kids about it. Certainly, when it comes to the night of Halloween itself, we will have non-Muslim kids going about trick-or-treating, as they say. So we need to know what that terminology is. What does it mean? And what does it mean for a Muslim child to go and do the same thing? Can Muslim children do the same thing? Many parents are at a loss to know what are we to do with our children in this sort of situation. And we don't have any easy answers, but we'll explore some of the answers together. But one way is to say to your kids, no, you cannot participate in that. But it doesn't end there, because now the kids want to know, why could we not participate? Why am I different from the other kids? And if they are at a certain age where you're trying to explain to them what Islam is and why they should follow Islam and why they should avoid things which are contrary to Islam, they may not understand. The only thing that may register for them at that time is that other kids are having fun, but because I'm a Muslim kid, I can't have fun. That means Muslim kids can't have fun. So you interpret it one way and you're trying your best to keep your child in the right path and to keep in Islam, but in the meantime, if we don't play it right, we might stand the chance of actually turning their minds away from Islam. So we have to be very careful about that. Whatever we do, we should do it with hikmah, with wisdom. We want to convey a certain message. We should make sure that that is the message that we are, in fact, conveying. So then, let's start at the beginning. What is this Halloween? Halloween. The word Halloween, actually, according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, and I have my notes here which I printed out from the CD-ROM edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Also some notes printed out from the web edition of an encyclopedia that is known as Wikipedia or Wikipedia. But according to the Encyclopedia Britannica, and this is well known, it's universally acknowledged information, the word Halloween actually comes, the name is a contraction. It means All Hallows Evening. So I should explain what that means. I should also point out that some years ago, our Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick, when he was the Imam at the Jami Masjid, had produced a paper which subsequently has been reprinted by ISRA, the Islamic Social Services and Resources Association, entitled The Truth About Halloween. And he has gone into much of the same history which we can find from many of these encyclopedias. It is standard information. We don't have to make any of this up. It is quite well known. So All Hallows Eve. All Hallows Eve. It means the evening of All Hallows Day. Now, if you look at any diary that you may have purchased, whether at Business Depot, Staples, or Grand and Toy, or what have you, and you notice the holidays that are noted in your calendar, you will notice that November 1st is All Saints' Day. In some regions, November 2nd is celebrated as All Saints' Day. This is a Christian holiday, Early in Christianity, it was recognized that there should be a day in which they celebrate or glorify or remember the saints, those good Christian folks who have died in the past. So they keep a day as a memorial of the dead, just like maybe November 11th is kept as Remembrance Day in some cultures. Well, the Christians were celebrating on May 13th a day known as All Saints' Day. So another word for saints in ancient times would have been hallows. Hallows. Hallow means something sacred, venerated, something divine or godly. So All Saints' Day would have been All Hallows' Day. And the night before that, that's the evening before that, would be the evening of All Hallows' Day, or All Hallows' Evening. And in Old English, it was possible to drop the V and put an apostrophe. So All Hallows E'en, and that eventually become Hallows E'en, or just simply Halloween by contracting. So, but how did that become November 1st? Or the night before, which is October 31st, would now be the All Hallows Evening. How did that come about? Well, Pope Gregory III, apparently, as these history sources are informing us, he was the one who adopted November 1st to be the same holiday. We previously mentioned it was on May 13th. But then when Christianity spread into the Roman world, a holiday was already being observed in the Roman world. And that holiday was widespread among the non-Christian peoples. So when Christianity entered into these regions, it seems, and this is one suggestion, that the general policy among Christians, in fact, it's not only a suggestion, this is widely known, that the general policy among Christians was to kind of adopt the religion, the practices and the holidays which are there in the environment, so long as it could be given a kind of Christian slant. So in this way, for example, Easter, which had a non-Christian beginning, came to be adopted as a Christian celebration, but we put into that the idea that Christ resurrected from the dead, and that becomes the holiday when it is celebrated. But it was already a spring festival in the region. In a similar way, Christmas was celebrated on December 25th, already before Christianity came on the scene. But when Christianity spread into the Greek and Roman world, then the Christians just simply adopted the same holiday, and now they made it a celebration of the birth of the Son of God, whereas previously it used to be the celebration of the birth of the Son God. But now Christians made it the birthday of the Son of God. So that was the general policy. It happened in one case after another. Sunday is the day of the sun. And that is the day on which the sun worshippers would have been very busy with their religious activities. But Christians eventually adopted Sunday to be their main day, as opposed to the Sabbath, which was written in their text. They were told in the Old Testament, observe the Sabbath. We can see in the New Testament that the earliest Christians were still observing the Sabbath, meaning Saturday. But then Christians adopted Sunday as their main day, now to celebrate the fact, as they say, that Isa alayhi salam rose from the dead. That's when his tomb was discovered to be empty, they say. And they adopted then Sunday. But why did they pick this particular day, Sunday? It is because it was already a celebration in the ancient world, and their policy was to kind of adopt these celebrations and make it in some way their own. So sometimes this is an attractive thing that Muslims may come and say, okay, other people are praying on Sunday. Sunday is a holiday. Why do we have to pray on Friday? Why don't we just switch it to Sunday, make it easy for everybody, and then on Sunday we are all at home, we can all come to the Friday prayer. This is an attractive concept. It's tempting to do that, but of course Muslims remain conservative. We have the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have full confidence in, that this is a revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It mentions Yawmul Jum'ah, and that is the day when the gathering should be held. So we stick to that. We do not change around the religion of Allah, because you make one little change here and another little change there, and eventually you make so many changes that the end result is far from the beginning. And then you can no longer claim that this is the religion of God. You have to say this is a religion that's made up by the people. And so we keep it as it was. But that was the policy of Christians, generally, to adopt as much as possible the religions and, the religious practices and observances and festivals, as much as these could be given a Christian slant or a Christian interpretation. So now, they switched All Hallows Day, All Saints Day, from May 13th to November 1st, because November 1st was already a celebration in the ancient world. What celebration was it? It was a celebration of a festival known as Samhain. Samhain among the Celts in Ireland was thought to be the god of death. And it was thought that on this occasion, on the eve of November 1st, meaning on October 31st, somehow there was an opening allowed for the dead persons to come and roam on the earth. The separation that kept the two worlds apart, the living and the dead, now becomes somehow pierced on this night, and it is possible for the dead from old to come and be roaming around the earth. And to protect oneself from these dead people and other evil spirits, ghouls, and so on, then the best thing to do was to disguise yourself. Look like one of them. And so you wouldn't be harmed by them. It's not clear whether this is the only reason. Some suggest also that this may be a way of placating them, making them feel like, okay, if you try to be like them, then in a way you were a friend of theirs. So to placate them, to make them happy. So this is the origin then of the costume that people have on Halloween. People try to dress up as Draculas and ghosts and goblins and ghouls and what have you, with this idea in mind. This is where it all began. Nowadays, it may not be exactly this. Maybe somebody may now be dressing up like Spider-Man, or maybe something very strange. Maybe somebody will wear a costume to look like a potato or something like this. People have now forgotten the original reasons why these things were being done. Moreover, now it has turned into a commercial enterprise where the costumes are being sold, and in some parts of the world, it's been noted in these sources, the expenditures at Halloween, in fact, come very close to what is being done at Christmas. It's the next it's the next best season for the retailers. Some of the costumes, it has been noted, are so expensive that the average person spends about $38, they say, in buying the costume that will be worn. So this becomes ubiquitous. There is a Halloween party, and one has to wear a costume to go to the Halloween party. And maybe even the work place may arrange a Halloween party, and the workers may be expected to be there. It becomes a time for people to celebrate, and people need to celebrate, so they do not know what to celebrate, and they celebrate something. Of course, Muslims have much to do and much to celebrate and much to think about and a purpose in life for which they have to dedicate themselves. But people who do not have these, they have to clutch at something. As they say, a drowning man clutches at a straw. And they say, if you're hungry, you'll eat anything. So if one does not have a guidance and a purpose in life, then one will take anything that comes. One needs a reason to celebrate. One needs something to do. What do you do with 24 hours in your day after you've worked for only 8? So you need something more. People need these festivities and celebrations, and so they adopt and they invent and they take whatever is available. It's all up for grabs. So Halloween is available. People see it as something, it looks like fun, something new, something different. They feel, why don't we do that? But we need to know, what are the origins of these things? Where do they come from? Halloween becomes a mixture, in fact, of a number of different celebrations and festivities. There was also the idea that you're coming to the end of summer, or at least the end of this, summer is long gone by the end of October, but the end of October also marks the end of the harvest season. So by that time, if November begins, it gets very cold, farming and so on will come to a halt. So there is also the festivals that go with worshipping and placating the gods of harvest. There was one particular god, Pomona, who was thought to be the goddess of fruits. And an act which actually reflects that origin of, or one of the aspects of Halloween is bobbing for apples. In Ireland and elsewhere, it has remained a sport on this evening, on the Halloween evening, where they would have apples floating in a tub, and people will go and try to grab these apples with their mouth alone. And sometimes they put coins as well in the tub. Of course, the coins would sink, and one would have to go and try to get the coins, which are not so easy to obtain. And in some places now it is noted that the practice has changed because people are now more concerned with diseases that might be spread by the saliva, and so they do not want people to put their mouths into the water, but they use forks and try to skewer the apples with the fork. So whoever skewers the apple, he gets that one as his prize. That is a practice that reflects the fact that Halloween used to be a time for worshiping Pomona, or the goddess of the fruit. And I believe in French, what is apple in French, Sohail? La pomme, yeah? So you can see that Pomona was being worshipped at that time, and the practice, in fact, still remains. The idea of trick-or-treating, in fact, is a very old idea, and it doesn't start from something bad. It actually starts from something good, but we might see if actually it remains something good, and you'll be the judge of that. There was a practice that the poor people used to go around and beg for something to eat, and people would give them cakes, and this would be referred to as soul cakes. But from that practice of the poor going around to beg, now there was a way open, it seemed, for children to start doing the same thing. And in ancient times, because this was the time when people would be hoarding up and storing up provisions for the winter. Nowadays, of course, winter does not bring a halt to life because you have indoor heating and you have heated cars and so on. So you go about as fairly as usual. But in ancient times and in regions where it was very cold in the winters, people had to store up nuts and other such goodies for the winter because they're going to mostly be indoors. And the kids going around to collect such supplies would have been one of the ways in which that whole process of trick-or-treating began. But now it has become something where the kids will go and they say trick-or-treat. Nowadays, people don't even know what the term trick-or-treat really refers to. But it really means that if you do not treat me, I trick you. And they say that this goes back also to the idea that the dead used to come and roam the earth. And the gods used to also come and play tricks on the people who worship them on that particular night. And you had to treat them. You had to give them something good so that they'll be happy with you and they won't pull a trick on you. So the idea now is that the kids go and they're doing this trick-or-treat. It means you have to give them something, candy or whatever, otherwise they might throw eggs on your house or they might do something terrible to you. They'll pull a trick on you. And it is reported that in some places in England, Ireland especially, it became so bad that, people had these out houses, the pit latrines, right? You have the latrines outside a little house, you go there and take care of your needs. So, the youth would come and topple those pit latrine covers, right, the little outhouses, and sometimes move them away from their bases and so on. This is how terrible it became. It became an opportunity for vandalism. Of course, nowadays, the Halloween has actually become that opportunity as well for some evil things to be done on that particular night. People have to watch their cats on that night. Why? Because on that night, people associate there are some people who still think about the history of this night as being connected with evil forces. It was thought that on this night, magic is more potent. And people who practice the magical art, they want to get the black cats. They think that black cats will somehow have magical properties. And sometimes black cats are captured and killed on that night. So if one has a cat, one has to really be careful and watch his cat on that night. In general, it presents the opportunity for people to think of doing evil things. And the movies that come to be released close to Halloween actually reflect a very ghastly and evil and grotesque type of mindset, where you have, somebody who will be featured in one of these films is somebody who is a slayer. He comes to slash everyone. He usually comes in a very frightening appearance. I think now they have something like Saw 4 or something like this. And, I don't know. From the title alone, I can imagine they probably have somebody who goes with a saw and rips people apart or something like this. But that's the kind of graphic, violent type of thing that comes to be associated with Halloween. Apparently, like, Halloween gives you the opportunity to exercise all of these fantasies. At other times, you had to be normal, you had to dress normal, you wouldn't come dressing like the devil. But Halloween gives a person the opportunity to wear two horns and a tail and carry a pitchfork and say, I'm the devil for a day, right? But this is how things start. First, one fantasizes, one thinks about doing something, one thinks about being in that role, and then he actually does it. Not everybody does it. But this is at least the opening and the first step that makes it possible for some, whereas it might not have been possible before. So we should be aware as well that that night, because it allows people to dress in costumes and conceal their identity, it also gives people the opportunity to commit crimes. We spoke about vandalism, but there's also the possibility of a greater level of crime. So altogether then, coming at this end and being here in Canada, we should be asking what are the implications for Muslims with regards to this festival. As Sheikh Abdullah Hakim Quick has pointed out in his article, The Truth About Halloween, there are implications. First, Muslims cannot be involved in something which is connected to the worship of saints, or with dead people in general, or worse yet, in connection with pagan gods and placating the pagan gods, such as Pomona or the god of the dead Samhain from ancient times. We believe that there is only one God, Allah, who creates and controls everything. Allah is the one who gives us fruit and harvest. Allah is the one who is in control of all of the living and the dead. Allah is everything, and we celebrate Him every day by worshiping Allah and praying to Him throughout the day, especially during the 5 specific prayers in a day. So we cannot single out a day and worship other gods or have anything to do in honoring and glorifying these other gods. Second, Muslims cannot really pretend to be evil things or evil persons just for the fun of it. It's not within the Muslim character to do that. A Muslim finds not only that evil is evil to do, but it's even evil to imagine or to think of oneself as doing those things, or being in that situation, or being in that role. So to wear some of the costumes that depict a very evil character, to dress like a witch or like a ghost or something ghastly or deadly, or like sometimes people even take on, they wear the costumes like he is the slayer himself. He is the guy with the chainsaw that will go and massacre people. Of course, he wouldn't have a real one, but he may adopt the disguise of the movie stars who star in these movies, whether it be Halloween. I think there's a new movie, Halloween, coming out, or Saw, or Jason the Slayer, or there's a Jason, right? Is there a Jason in one of these movies? The Jason the Slayer or something like that? What is he? Jason or something like this, a star in one of these movies who, he's a star, but he goes about killing people. So sometimes people, to celebrate this occasion, they adopt these costumes as well. They want to appear like that terrible guy. But for a Muslim, this is far from what we can be. Third, there is the idea of begging, and this is what often it really comes down to. The kids want to go trick-or-treating. For most kids, that's what all it amounts to. Can I have a costume to dress up? That's one thing. And more so, can I go and trick-or-treat? Well, when it comes to trick-or-treating, here it becomes more delicate because kids will be home, other kids will come knocking on your door, trick-or-treat, so what do you do then? So if you keep your own kids at home, it would seem like you're barring them from having the fun which the laughing kids outside are having. Moreover, what do you do in terms of, do you give them candy or do you shoo them? You go, go away, we are Muslims. What do you do? Well, as I said earlier, there is no easy answer to any of these things. But we have to now see what works and play it by ear and use a little bit of wisdom. My kids are now, of course, all grown up, so it's a different issue for me. But when they were very young, what we did was we bought a lot